I always knew my neighbor Karen was a little entitled, but I never thought she'd have the audacity to steal from me. It started small. My internet would slow down at random times, usually in the evenings. At first, I blamed my provider, thinking it was just another one of their routine maintenance excuses. But then, late one night, I noticed something odd. My router had more connected devices than I owned. Now, I live alone. My phone, laptop, and smart TV are the only things hooked up to my Wi-Fi. But according to my router settings, there was an extra device lurking in my network. Someone was stealing my internet. I wasn't about to let that slide, but I needed proof. So, I did what any tech-savvy person would do. I set a trap. First, I changed my Wi-Fi password. Within minutes, my router log showed a device repeatedly trying to reconnect. Bingo. Someone nearby had been using my Wi-Fi so much that they didn't even notice the change. But who? I needed to be sure. The next evening, I sat outside with my laptop, scanning for active connections while watching the neighborhood. That's when I saw it. Karen's lights flickered off. A few minutes later, they came back on. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing was too perfect. My router log confirmed it. The moment my Wi-Fi locked them out, they lost their connection. I grinned. So it was Karen. Of course, it was Karen. This woman had a reputation for mooching off people in the most ridiculous ways. She once tried to guilt-trip another neighbor into giving her their Netflix password because, in her words, streaming services should be community resources. And now, she was treating my Wi-Fi like it was her personal service. But I wasn't done yet. Just locking her out wasn't enough. No, I wanted her to know that I knew. I wanted her to feel just a fraction of the embarrassment she'd caused others with her entitlement. That's when I had the perfect idea. The next morning, I changed my Wi-Fi name. Simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. Karen, pay your bills. That evening, I sat back, sipping my coffee, waiting for the fireworks. And oh, did they come. Because the second she saw it, Karen lost her mind. Karen's reaction to my Wi-Fi name change was priceless. I wasn't outside when she saw it, but I knew the exact moment she did. 1 second, everything was quiet. The next, I heard an angry, exaggerated gasp from across the street, followed by a screeching, "Are you kidding me?" I swear, even the birds scattered from the trees. I casually peeked through my blinds, and there she was, standing on her porch, phone in hand, staring at her screen with an expression like she'd just discovered her credit card got declined in front of a long checkout line. I didn't have to guess what was happening. She was trying to connect to my Wi-Fi, and instead of her usual free ride, she was met with a digital slap to the face. "Karen, pay your bills." I figured that would be the end of it. She'd be embarrassed, maybe huff about it for a few days, and finally pay for her own internet like a normal person. Oh, how wrong I was. Instead of taking the hint, she doubled down. The next morning, I saw her outside talking to one of our neighbors, waving her arms dramatically. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. "So rude! Who does that? It's just internet!" Oh, so now it was just internet? Then why was she so pressed about it? I ignored her, assuming she'd let it go. But that afternoon, as I sat down to binge-watch my favorite show, my internet connection dropped. At first, I thought it was my provider acting up again, but then I checked my router settings, and my network name was gone. What the hell? I restarted the router, and when it came back online, my Wi-Fi name had changed. Neighbor's Internet. Free-for-all. My jaw dropped. This woman, this absolute menace, had somehow messed with my network. I had security on it, but clearly that wasn't enough. I immediately changed everything back and locked my settings even tighter, but now I was pissed. She wanted to play dirty? Fine, I could play dirty too. First, I renamed my Wi-Fi again. Karen, I see you. Then I waited. That evening, as I sat outside innocently, sipping my drink, I saw Karen on her porch again. This time, she wasn't ranting. She was staring at her phone, her face going pale. I could practically hear her brain short-circuiting. A few seconds later, she looked up, scanning the street like some Wi-Fi police were about to come arrest her. The paranoia was setting in. I bit my lip to keep from laughing, but this was just the beginning. The next day, I took it up a notch. I set up a dummy network, one that looked real but led to nowhere. I named it Free Wi-Fi for Neighbors, knowing full well Karen wouldn't be able to resist. Within an hour, my trap worked. My router logs showed an unfamiliar device trying to connect, over and over. I imagined Karen, furiously tapping her phone, wondering why it wasn't working. But oh, it got better. Instead of letting her connect, I set up a fake loading screen. Every time she clicked, it redirected her to a page that read, "Karen, seriously, just pay for your own Wi-Fi." It took less than a minute for me to hear her frustrated scream from across the street. But Karen still wasn't giving up. That night, I saw her husband, or whatever poor soul lived with her, messing with a laptop on their porch. I could tell they were trying to crack my password. Every few minutes, they'd glance up at my house like they were in some high-stakes spy mission. "Oh, you want to hack me? Let's see how that works out for you." I changed my Wi-Fi name again. This time, I went for maximum paranoia. I named it FBI Surveillance Van Number 32. I knew it was petty. I knew it was ridiculous. But I also knew that Karen was the type of person who believed every conspiracy theory she came across on Facebook. And just as I hoped, the reaction was immediate. The very next day, I overheard her talking to another neighbor, whispering loudly about how the government is spying on our street and how she always knew something shady was going on here. I nearly choked on my coffee, but she still wasn't done. A few days later, I came home to a handwritten note taped to my door. In Karen's unmistakably dramatic handwriting, it read, "Whoever named their Wi-Fi this, you need to stop. It's making people nervous." Oh, is it? Time to turn up the heat. I changed my Wi-Fi name again. Error 404, Wi-Fi not found. That evening, I saw her outside, pacing back and forth, glaring at her phone. Every few seconds, she'd look up at my house like I had personally cursed her. I knew she'd try to ask around. But the beauty of this plan was that no one would admit to knowing anything. She was stuck in Wi-Fi limbo, furious but powerless. But she wasn't about to take this lying down. The next day, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Karen standing there, arms crossed, face twisted into her signature "I'm about to cause a scene" expression. "I know it's you," she snapped. I blinked innocently. "I'm sorry?" "The Wi-Fi names," she hissed, like we were in some kind of top-secret interrogation. "I know you're doing it." I tilted my head. "Karen, why do you care so much about other people's Wi-Fi?" She turned red. Because it's rude. You're making the neighborhood uncomfortable." I resisted the urge to burst out laughing. "How?" "You just stop it," she huffed. "It's childish." I crossed my arms. "Childish like stealing your neighbor's internet?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I had her. "I don't," she started, but I cut her off. "Karen, pay your bills." And then I shut the door in her face. That should have been the end of it. It really should have. But Karen was the kind of person who just had to get the last word. That weekend, I noticed something new. A Wi-Fi network had popped up in my list. "My neighbor is a jerk." I burst out laughing. Oh, this woman was determined. So, naturally, I responded. I changed mine to "Enjoy your dial-up, Karen." The next day, her network changed to "At least I'm not petty." Oh, it was on. For the next 2 weeks, we had an all-out Wi-Fi war. Every day, one of us would change our network name to something more ridiculous. Stealing Wi-Fi is a crime. No free internet for Karen. I have better internet than you. Change your own name, Karen. It reached a point where other neighbors started joining in. Before I knew it, our entire street was in on the joke. I saw Wi-Fi names pop up like "This is getting stupid," "Karen, just stop," and my personal favorite, "We're all watching you." Karen eventually stopped fighting. Whether she finally gave up or her internet got fixed, I don't know. But the last Wi-Fi name she ever used before disappearing from the battle? "I hate this neighborhood." Good. Maybe now she'd finally learn to pay her damn bills. I thought the Wi-Fi war was over. I really did. After Karen finally backed down and stopped renaming her network, I figured she had accepted her defeat and slunk away to either pay for her own internet or sit in bitter silence. But I had vastly underestimated just how much this woman thrived on drama. She wasn't done, not even close. She just changed her strategy. If she couldn't win the battle online, She was going to take it offline. It started small, just whispers. Little murmurs from neighbors when I walked by, conversations that stopped just a little too quickly when I got close. At first, I ignored it. I wasn't the type to get involved in neighborhood drama, and I certainly wasn't about to let Karen pull me into some petty nonsense. But then, one afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Dawson, the sweetest old lady on the block, and she gave me a look of genuine concern. "Oh dear," she said, shaking her head. "I heard you've been having some issues with Karen." I blinked. Yeah, but it's nothing serious." She pursed her lips. "Well, she's been saying some interesting things about you." That got my attention. Like what? Mrs. Dawson leaned in like she was about to reveal some deep, dark secret. "She says you've been hacking into her internet." I nearly choked on my own spit. "What?" "She told me she caught you messing with her Wi-Fi," Mrs. Dawson continued. "Said you're some kind of, what did she call it? Tech hacker. And that you've been spying on people through their devices." I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. Karen was telling people I was hacking her Wi-Fi? The same Wi-Fi she had been trying to steal from me? This was next-level delusion. Okay, that's insane," I said, rubbing my temples. "She's the one who was stealing my Wi-Fi." Mrs. Dawson gave me a sympathetic pat on the arm. "Oh, I believe you, dear, but not everyone does." And that's when I realized just how far Karen's little gossip campaign had gone. Because Mrs. Dawson was nice, one of the few people who probably saw through Karen's nonsense. But not everyone in the neighborhood was as reasonable. Over the next few days, I started noticing the looks, people whispering behind their hands when I walked by. One of the other moms yanking her kid away when he tried to say hi to me. Even the guy who usually waved when I took out my trash just stared at me like I had personally insulted his ancestors. Karen had poisoned the well. And of course, because this was Karen we were dealing with, she wasn't satisfied with just turning people against me. She had to escalate. One morning, I woke up to find a handwritten flyer stuffed in my mailbox. I unfolded it, my brain barely processing the words at first. But then I read it, and I felt my brain short-circuit. "Warning, a hacker lives among us." Oh no. It has come to my attention that someone in our neighborhood has been engaging in illegal cyber activities. This individual has been tampering with people's Wi-Fi, spying on their personal devices, and harassing law-abiding neighbors. If you have experienced strange internet issues, unusual activity on your devices, or feel like your privacy has been violated, please report it immediately. And at the bottom, be careful who you trust. Signed, a concerned neighbor. Oh, she was good. She didn't even put her name on it, but everyone and their grandma knew exactly who wrote it. And to make things worse, she had made copies. I found them everywhere. On doorsteps, tucked under windshield wipers, pinned to the community bulletin board like it was some kind of FBI wanted poster. I was fuming. This woman had gone from stealing my Wi-Fi to actively trying to turn the neighborhood against me. And the worst part? It was working. The next time I went outside, I caught my next-door neighbor, Steve, staring at me like I was some kind of cyber criminal. "Dude," he said, shaking his head, "are you really hacking people's stuff?" I sighed. "Steve, do I look like I have time to hack people?" He squinted. "I mean, I did see you outside a few weeks ago with your laptop, looking all serious." I groaned. "I was checking my own network because someone was stealing my Wi-Fi." Steve nodded slowly, clearly trying to process this new information. Karen did lose her connection that night. "Exactly," I said. "Because she was using my internet." Steve frowned. "Wait, so she's the one who was stealing?" "Yes." "And now she's accusing you of hacking her?" "Yes." Steve scratched his head. "Man, that's kinda messed up." I threw my hands in the air. "Thank you." Thankfully, Steve wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he wasn't completely brainwashed by Karen either. He started spreading the real story, and slowly, a few people started coming around. But Karen wasn't done yet. No, she had one more trick up her sleeve. The next morning, I woke up to a loud knock on my door. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing on my porch. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Are you my name?" one of them asked. I swallowed. Yeah? We got a report about some suspicious internet activity coming from this house. I swear I saw my entire life flash before my eyes. Suspicious what? The second officer pulled out a notepad. A neighbor reported that you've been hacking into people's networks and spying on them. I blinked. Officer, with all due respect, that's insane. They exchanged glances. Would you be willing to let us check your internet setup, just to clear this up? At this point, I had nothing to hide, so I let them in. They took one look at my router, saw that I had a standard setup, and within minutes, it was obvious that Karen's accusations were completely baseless. One of the officers actually sighed like he was tired of dealing with neighborhood nonsense. Well, he said, shutting his notepad, looks like someone just wasted our time. I knew exactly who that someone was. As they left, I saw Karen watching from her porch, her arms crossed, her face twisted into a smug little smirk. She thought she had won. Oh, she had no idea what was coming. Because if Karen thought I was done, she was sorely mistaken. If Karen thought I was going to just sit back and take all this, she had seriously miscalculated. The false accusations, the police showing up at my door, the ridiculous flyers painting me as some kind of criminal, I was done. I had been playing defense this whole time, trying to clear my name while Karen wove a web of lies around me. But now I was going on the offensive. The moment the cops left my house, I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything. Screenshots of her previous Wi-Fi names, saved. Photos of the flyers she spread around the neighborhood, collected. A list of neighbors who had witnessed her nonsense and were willing to back me up, compiled. If Karen wanted a war, she was about to see what happened when you push someone too far. First, I went straight to a lawyer. I wasn't sure what legal grounds I had, but I was damn sure there was something in all of this that crossed the line. The lawyer listened patiently as I explained everything. How Karen had been stealing my Wi-Fi, how she spread lies about me, how she even got the cops involved in her delusional crusade. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, tapped her pen against the desk and said, "Yeah, we can work with this." First off, there was defamation. Karen had actively spread false information about me that damaged my reputation. The flyers alone were enough to prove that she had gone out of her way to make me look like a criminal. And because people in the neighborhood actually believed her, it had real consequences. People avoided me, questioned my integrity, and made my life unnecessarily stressful. Then, there was false police reporting. Sure, the cops hadn't arrested me, but she had wasted police resources on a completely bogus claim. That wasn't just petty, it was illegal. And let's not forget harassment. Karen had been targeting me non-stop, trying to make my life miserable just because I dared to stand up to her Wi-Fi theft. Between the constant lies, the community smear campaign, and dragging law enforcement into it, she had gone way past the line of simple neighborly disputes. So what do we do? I asked, already itching to take action. My lawyer smirked. We hit back, hard. The first step was a cease and desist letter. It was the legal equivalent of a warning shot, a formal notice telling Karen to stop her nonsense or face serious consequences. The letter laid everything out in clear terms: her defamatory claims, her harassment, and the false police report. It warned that if she didn't retract her statements and cease her behavior immediately, we would be taking her to court. And because I wanted her to really feel the heat, I didn't just send it to her. I delivered it in person. I walked right up to her house, knocked on her door, and when she answered, I handed her the letter with a smile. "You've been served," I said, enjoying the way her face twisted in confusion. She snatched the letter and skimmed through it, her expression shifting from smugness to disbelief to rage. "You can't be serious," she sputtered. "Oh, I'm very serious," I said. "You wanted to play games? Now you're playing in the big leagues." She slammed the door in my face, but I wasn't worried, because I knew what was coming next. The thing about people like Karen, they never think the rules apply to them. They assume they can do whatever they want with zero consequences. So, of course, she ignored the cease and desist, which was perfect, because that meant we could move on to phase 2, the lawsuit. My lawyer wasted no time filing a defamation lawsuit against Karen. We weren't just asking for an apology, we were seeking damages. Her actions had impacted my reputation, my peace of mind, and had even affected my ability to comfortably live in my own neighborhood. And we had proof, witness statements, saved copies of her flyers, even the police report that showed she had wasted law enforcement's time with her lies. When Karen got the official notice that she was being sued, she lost it. I knew because Steve, my neighbor, texted me. "Bro, she's outside screaming into her phone. I think you broke her." I peeked out my window, and sure enough, Karen was pacing up and down her driveway, wildly gesturing as she argued with someone over the phone. I could only imagine the conversation. Probably something like, "What do you mean I can't just make things up about people?" For the first time since this entire mess started, I felt like I was winning. But then, Karen did what Karen does best. She doubled down. Instead of admitting she was in the wrong, she started telling everyone that I was suing her for no reason. She played the victim, acting like I was some monster trying to ruin her life over a misunderstanding. And, of course, some of the neighborhood busybodies ate it up. "I just don't understand why he's taking this so far," one woman whispered when she thought I couldn't hear. "She's just a little dramatic," another neighbor said. "I don't think she meant any harm." Oh, that made me furious. Karen had spent weeks trying to destroy my reputation. She called the police on me. And now that she was facing consequences, she was acting like I was the problem? Fine. If she wanted to play the victim, I was going to make sure everyone saw the truth. I compiled every single piece of evidence and sent an email to the neighborhood group chat. Not a rant, not an angry message, just cold, hard facts. Screenshots of her Wi-Fi theft, photos of her flyers, a copy of the police report showing that she was the one who wasted their time, and finally, the cease and desist letter she had ignored. I didn't say much, just attached everything with a simple message. Since there's been some confusion, I thought I'd clarify the situation. Here's everything in case anyone still has doubts. Make your own judgments. And then, I sat back and let the truth do its work. It didn't take long. Within hours, the tide completely turned. People started messaging me, apologizing for believing Karen's lies. Some of the same people who had given me the cold shoulder suddenly wanted to be my best friend. Even Steve, who had been semi-neutral through all of this, texted me. "Dude, I knew she was nuts, but this? Damn." But the best part? Karen went silent. No more gossip, no more drama, no more nonsense. And a few weeks later, I found out why. Karen settled the lawsuit. She knew she didn't stand a chance in court, and rather than risk a full trial, she agreed to pay damages and issue a written apology. She didn't do it because she wanted to. She did it because she had no choice. And just like that, the battle was over. Karen still lived in the neighborhood, but she never looked me in the eye again. She avoided me like the plague. And honestly, that was the best outcome I could have asked for. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't just about Wi-Fi. It was about standing up to people who think they can get away with anything. Karen thought she could bully me, spread lies, and ruin my reputation without consequences. But she learned the hard way: mess around and find out. If I had thought Karen was done after the lawsuit, I was dead wrong. Normal people, when faced with the reality that they've lost, take the L and move on. But Karen? Oh no, Karen's mind didn't work that way. Instead of backing off and accepting that she had finally been beaten at her own game, she did what Karen do best. She doubled down in the most ridiculous way possible. At first, I thought the silence meant she had learned her lesson. Days passed without any new drama. No gossip spreading through the neighborhood. No passive-aggressive stares from her porch. No police knocking on my door with another false report. It was too quiet, and that's what made me suspicious. Karen was many things, but she wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. Then, one evening, my internet started acting weird. It wasn't a total blackout, but my connection kept cutting in and out. Sometimes it would drop entirely for a few minutes, only to return as if nothing had happened. At first, I assumed it was just a service issue, but after a few days of this, I got curious. So, I did what any tech-savvy person would do. I pulled up my router logs, and that's when I saw it. Someone had been trying to access my network again. I stared at the logs in disbelief. The failed login attempts were there, clear as day. Repeated tries to break into my router using different generic passwords. It wasn't just once or twice, it was dozens of times over the past few days. Someone was desperately trying to crack my Wi-Fi, and I had a very strong suspicion of who that someone was, but I needed proof. So, I set a trap. I changed my Wi-Fi name to something that would tempt Karen into making a move. The new network name? Karen's Free Wi-Fi, no password. Then, I set up a separate, isolated guest network with no actual internet access. If Karen tried to connect to it, she'd think she had succeeded, but in reality, she'd just be spinning her wheels, stuck on a dead-end network that did nothing. Sure enough, it worked. Not even an hour later, my logs lit up with activity. Someone had connected to Karen's Free Wi-Fi, no password, and was frantically trying to get online. The sheer number of failed connection requests told me everything I needed to know. Karen had taken the bait. I could have stopped there, but honestly, she had pushed me too far. I decided it was time to teach Karen a lesson she'd never forget. Using a simple bit of tech magic, I redirected all her traffic to one single web page, a bright red warning screen that read, "Karen, we know. Pay your own damn internet bill." To really drive the point home, I made sure the page blasted an alarm sound the moment she connected. And, oh boy, the results were spectacular. Not even 2 minutes later, I heard an ear-piercing scream from Karen's house. A few seconds after that, there was the sound of something slamming, probably her laptop, and then dead silence. I barely had time to process my victory before my phone started ringing. It was Steve, my neighbor, barely able to contain his laughter. "Dude, did you just hack Karen?" I grinned. "Not really. She hacked herself." Steve was howling on the other end. Apparently, Karen had been ranting about someone spying on her and hijacking her internet. The irony was almost too much. The woman who had spent weeks trying to steal my internet was now accusing me of hacking her non-existent network. But Karen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The next day, I woke up to an email from Karen, a long-winded rant full of misspelled threats, accusing me of cybercrime and demanding that I restore her internet. The best part? She CC'd my lawyer on the email. That was the moment I knew I had won. Because Karen, in her absolute lack of intelligence, had just admitted in writing that she had been trying to steal my Wi-Fi again. She practically handed over evidence against herself on a silver platter. So, I did the only logical thing. I forwarded the email straight to my lawyer with a single line. Should we add attempted hacking to the list? And that's when things really fell apart for Karen. By now, my lawyer was completely done with her nonsense. Instead of responding directly, she went straight to the authorities. Since Karen had already been caught lying to the police before, they were more than happy to listen when we handed over the logs showing her repeated hacking attempts. A few days later, Karen got a visit from law enforcement. I wasn't there to see it, but Steve, ever the reliable neighborhood informant, sent me a play-by-play. Karen tried to play dumb at first, acting like she had no idea what was going on, but then the officer showed her the evidence, and the color drained from her face. Long story short, Karen was issued a hefty fine for unauthorized attempts to access my network. Apparently, in my state, attempting to access someone's secured Wi-Fi without permission is considered a cyber offense. She wasn't getting arrested, but she was getting a financial slap hard enough to make her think twice before pulling another stunt like this. But here's the real kicker. The very next day, Karen's house went up for sale. I guess when you become the laughingstock of the entire neighborhood and get legally smacked down, moving away is the only option left. Steve called me the moment he saw the for sale sign. "Dude, you actually made Karen move." I smirked. I'd like to think she finally realized she wasn't as smart as she thought. And just like that, the reign of Karen was over. You'd think Karen moving away would mean the nightmare was over. That after all the drama, the stolen Wi-Fi, the legal battles, and her ridiculous attempts to outsmart me, peace would finally return to the neighborhood. But no, this was Karen we were dealing with, and she wasn't the kind of person to go down quietly. For a while, things seemed normal. The for sale sign stood in front of her house, and we all assumed she'd pack up and disappear. The gossip around the block was that Karen was being forced to sell because of unjust treatment by her horrible neighbors. In reality, she had burned so many bridges that even the few people who used to tolerate her were keeping their distance. But just when I thought she was gone for good, I learned the terrible news. Karen wasn't leaving. She was renting out her house instead. And not just to anyone. No. Karen, in her never-ending quest for revenge, Hand-picked the most insufferable tenants possible, the kind of people who would make sure my life was miserable in new and creative ways. It started small. The new tenants, a couple in their mid-40s, had a mysterious hatred for driveways. Despite having a perfectly usable garage, they decided that my driveway, was a better parking spot for their cars. At first, I thought it was an accident. Maybe they mistook it for public parking? I tried being polite, casually mentioning, "Hey, just so you know, this is my driveway." They smiled. They nodded. They didn't move their cars. The next morning, same thing. So I left a note, a very polite note. The response? A passive-aggressive note taped to my front door saying, "You don't own the street. Stop being selfish." Oh, so that's how we were playing this. I was done being polite. I called the towing company and had their cars removed. They flipped out, shouting, threatening legal action, even trying to intimidate me by standing on my lawn at night just to make me uncomfortable. But what they didn't know was that I had security cameras, and I used every second of their weird, creepy behavior to file a report. That shut them up for about a week. Then, the noise complaints started. At exactly 3:00 a.m., every single night, blasting music so loud it shook my windows. They were smart about it too, never loud enough to get cops involved, but just enough to be infuriating. They were playing the long game, trying to wear me down, but they underestimated my level of pettiness. I bought a set of industrial-grade speakers and positioned them right against our shared fence. At exactly 5:00 a.m., just as they were falling asleep after their late-night noise attacks, I played the most annoying sound imaginable, a crying baby on a loop, every single morning. After 3 nights of this, they finally broke. I woke up to another passive-aggressive note, this time begging me to stop. Did I stop? Of course not. Not until I was absolutely sure they had learned their lesson. But just when I thought I had won, Karen made her grand return. Apparently, she had gotten complaints from the new tenants about harassment. Read, they couldn't handle the consequences of their own actions. And instead of realizing that she had picked the worst possible people to rent her house to, Karen doubled down. She came storming onto my lawn one evening, yelling loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "This is harassment. I will sue you for every penny you have." I just stared at her, completely unimpressed. "Karen, you don't even live here anymore." She hated that. She ranted, she raved, she threatened, but at this point, I had years of experience dealing with her nonsense. So I hit her with the one thing she hated the most: cold, hard facts. "Karen, you knowingly rented your house to problem tenants. They harassed me first. I have security footage, I have police reports, and I have receipts. You can threaten all you want, but we both know you don't have a case." That was it. That was the moment I saw the fire die in her eyes. She knew she had lost, again. But instead of admitting it, she did what Karen always did. She stormed off, screaming about how she was the real victim. 2 months later, her house was back on the market. And this time, she really did leave. Karen always acted like she was untouchable. She had spent years terrorizing the neighborhood, bending the rules in her favor, and weaponizing the HOA whenever it suited her. But like every entitled person who thrives on manipulation, she had one major weakness. Her lies always caught up to her. And this time, she got exposed in the worst possible way. It all started with a random conversation at a neighborhood barbecue. After Karen had rented out her house and failed to drive me insane with her problem tenants, she had mostly disappeared from our daily lives. But she wasn't gone. She still lurked in the background, popping up in neighborhood meetings, making herself the victim whenever possible. One of my neighbors, an older woman named Linda, casually mentioned something strange. "Did you hear about Karen's house? I heard she's still collecting HOA benefits even though she doesn't live here anymore." I almost choked on my drink. Wait, what? Now, keep in mind, Karen had made a big scene about how unfair the HOA was when she was forced to move. She claimed they were corrupt and only existed to bully good homeowners like her. So why was she still involved? I needed to find out. I started doing some digging, reaching out to people who actually knew how the HOA worked. And that's when I uncovered something shady. Karen wasn't just collecting HOA benefits. She had never actually left the HOA board. She was still secretly attending closed-door meetings, making financial decisions about the neighborhood, and even influencing fines on houses she didn't like. It was beyond corrupt. And I wasn't the only one who thought so. I gathered as much proof as I could. Old emails, screenshots of community group messages, and even financial statements that didn't add up. And then, I did something Karen never expected. I brought everything to the next public HOA meeting. The meeting started off like any other. Boring, filled with unnecessary complaints, and run by people who just wanted to control everyone else's business. But then I raised my hand. I have a question about HOA board member eligibility, I said, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. The head of the HOA, Mr. Thompson, adjusted his glasses. Go ahead. I turned to Karen, who was sitting smugly in the back, arms crossed like she owned the place. Can someone explain why a person who doesn't even live in the neighborhood is still making financial decisions for it? The room went silent. Karen froze. Mr. Thompson looked confused. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and started reading off exact financial transactions with Karen's name attached. Karen has been voting on HOA matters and even issuing fines, all while not legally living here. Isn't that against the rules? Karen jumped to her feet, face turning red. This is harassment. I have every right to be involved in this community. But she knew. She knew she was caught. Other homeowners started murmuring, flipping through their HOA documents and whispering to each other. And then Linda, sweet, calm, polite Linda, stood up. Karen, she said, if you don't even live here, why are you still collecting HOA fees? The entire room turned on her. One by one, people started asking questions. Why was she still making decisions? Why was she involved in financial votes? Where was all this extra money going? The HOA board members suddenly looked nervous, realizing that they too had been complicit in something shady. Karen had no way out. She tried every excuse. I was given honorary status. No such thing existed. I still own property here, which was rented out and no longer made her a resident. This is just a misunderstanding. It wasn't. And then the bombshell dropped. Mr. Thompson, who had been suspiciously quiet, sighed. Then he did something unexpected. He turned to Karen and said, Karen, I think it's time we tell them the truth. The room went dead silent again. Karen's eyes widened. What? You weren't just a board member, Mr. Thompson said. You were the one in charge of our HOA funds for the last 5 years. If there's any money missing, it's on you. Oh my God. It suddenly made perfect sense. The ridiculous fines, the mysterious charges that never got explained, the way the HOA always seemed suspiciously well-funded, even when homeowners were struggling to pay fees. Karen wasn't just a nuisance, she was a scammer, and now everyone knew. She tried to deny it, of course. You can't prove anything, she screamed. But I was already ahead of her. I pulled up a full list of questionable transactions, highlighting just how much money had disappeared under Karen's management. And the worst part? She wasn't the only one involved. Mr. Thompson's face went pale as he realized that if Karen went down, he was going down with her. The homeowners erupted into chaos. People started demanding immediate board resignations, an official audit, and even legal action. And Karen? She did the only thing she could think of. She ran out of the room, literally. She grabbed her purse and bolted, pushing past people like a criminal caught in the act. The HOA board was left scrambling, trying to contain the situation, but the damage was done. Karen had been exposed, and there was no coming back from this. Within a month, she was officially removed from the HOA, and a full investigation was launched. And the best part? The new HOA leadership cut down a bunch of the ridiculous rules she had put in place, making life in the neighborhood so much better. As for Karen, she vanished from our lives for good. At least, that's what we thought. Karen always had a way of pushing her luck, but this time, she pushed it too far. After being exposed at the HOA meeting, she vanished for a while. No surprise there, she had just been caught red-handed, illegally making financial decisions and lining her own pockets with HOA funds. The neighborhood was buzzing with rumors. Some people thought she had moved to another city to escape the heat. Others believed she was secretly fighting back, plotting her revenge from the shadows. But what no one expected was that Karen would make one final, desperate move, one that would end up costing her everything. At first, things were quiet. The HOA had launched an internal audit, and from what little information trickled out, it was bad. Really bad. Thousands of dollars had gone missing. Transactions with no paper trail. HOA funds mysteriously being transferred to private accounts. It was like a financial horror story, and Karen was right at the center of it. But instead of apologizing, admitting her mistakes, or just disappearing gracefully, she did the worst possible thing. She filed a lawsuit. That's right. After being exposed as a fraud, Karen actually had the audacity to sue the HOA for defamation. Her claim? That she had been unfairly removed, that she had never misused funds, and that everything was a personal attack against her. She wasn't just demanding a reinstatement, she wanted financial compensation. The entire neighborhood lost it. People were furious, outraged. The woman who had spent years bullying everyone, weaponizing HOA rules, and pocketing community money was now playing the victim and demanding money on top of that? It was insanity. But Karen wasn't done being ridiculous. Not even close. She went on a media tour. Okay, maybe media tour is an exaggeration, but she did manage to convince a few local news stations to cover her story. She painted herself as the tragic heroine, a poor woman who had been unfairly targeted by a group of vengeful neighbors. She cried fake tears on camera, talking about how she had dedicated years of her life to the community, only to be betrayed by jealous people who wanted her gone. It was infuriating, and it might have actually worked, if not for one major problem. The evidence against her was overwhelming. While Karen was busy playing the victim, the HOA's investigation had uncovered a full-blown financial scandal. Not only had Karen been funneling money into her own accounts, but she had also been faking expenses, charging the HOA for services that didn't exist. Landscaping fees for a non-existent gardener, security upgrades that never happened, even personal shopping expenses disguised as office supplies. She had scammed tens of thousands of dollars from the community. And the best part? The HOA wasn't just defending itself in court, they were countersuing. Karen's ridiculous lawsuit had triggered an official legal battle, and this time, she was the one on the losing side. Her biggest mistake was assuming she could bluff her way out of trouble. She thought she could intimidate the HOA into a settlement. Maybe she assumed they'd back down rather than deal with legal fees. Maybe she still believed she was untouchable. But she was dead wrong. The moment the counter lawsuit was filed, Karen's life started falling apart. Her bank records, subpoenaed. Her personal financial history, dragged into the case. Every single shady transaction she had ever made while on the HOA board laid out in front of a judge. And it only got worse, because as it turned out, the HOA wasn't the only group Karen had been scamming. The investigation uncovered debts she had hidden for years. She had defaulted on loans, maxed out multiple credit cards, and even failed to pay property taxes on one of her rental properties. She was already drowning in financial trouble, and this lawsuit? It was the final nail in the coffin. She lost everything. Her lawsuit? Thrown out. The HOA's counter-lawsuit? Successful. Karen was ordered to pay back every single dollar she had stolen, plus damages. The total amount? Nearly $200,000. She didn't have it. She tried everything to get out of it. She begged for a settlement. She tried to get the case appealed. She even attempted to play the victim again, claiming she was being financially destroyed by greedy neighbors who just wanted to ruin her life. No one bought it. The court didn't care. The HOA didn't care. The neighbors definitely didn't care. She had spent years terrorizing people, weaponizing rules, and bending the system in her favor. Now, she was getting exactly what she deserved. Within months, she had sold off her properties just to cover the court-ordered payments. Her house? Gone. Her rental income? Gone. Even her car was repossessed because she had been hiding unpaid debts on that too. Karen had destroyed herself. She went from ruling the neighborhood to having nothing left. And the irony? It was all because of her own arrogance. If she had just accepted defeat after getting exposed, she might have saved herself. But instead, she fought back, thinking she could bluff her way out. And in the end, that mistake cost her everything. Karen had lost everything. Her house, her reputation, her position in the HOA, all gone. The lawsuit had financially wiped her out, and she had no allies left in the neighborhood. She had spent years making enemies, and now she was on her own. But if she thought her problems ended there, She was dead wrong. Because while the legal system had done its job, the internet was just getting started. It all started with a single post. Someone from the neighborhood had taken all the juicy details of Karen's downfall and shared them on Reddit. It was a long, well-documented post, outlining every entitled thing she had ever done, from her insane HOA power trips to the way she had stolen thousands from the community. They included court records, news clippings, and even video footage from the HOA meeting where she had been exposed in real time. It went viral. Within hours, the post was blowing up. Thousands of people read it, upvoted it, and commented on how Karen was the ultimate example of karma in action. People were shocked at her level of entitlement, and they were furious that she had tried to sue her way out of trouble. The internet? It doesn't forget, and Karen had just become its latest target. But it didn't stop at Reddit. The post got shared on Twitter, Facebook, and even TikTok. People started making reaction videos, summarizing the story and roasting Karen for her audacity. One YouTuber even made a full documentary-style breakdown, pulling in footage from news reports and court records. The title? HOA Karen's $200,000 Meltdown, the internet's sweetest revenge. It hit 1 million views in a week. And then, things got worse. Someone recognized Karen. It turns out, before she was an HOA tyrant, Karen had a professional life. She had worked in real estate, managing rental properties for high-end clients. She had a LinkedIn profile, old promotional videos, even a business website, all under her real name. And once people connected the dots, it was over for her. Her business? Destroyed. Review sites like Yelp and Google exploded with negative reviews. People started leaving one-star ratings, calling her out for her corrupt HOA past. Even people who had never met her left comments warning potential clients. Some reviews were hilarious, calling her the queen of HOA tyranny and the human embodiment of a parking violation fine. Her real estate license? Someone dug into her records and discovered that her business had questionable financial dealings, just like the HOA funds she had stolen. A few former clients came forward, alleging fraud in her past real estate deals. It wasn't long before an official complaint was filed, leading to a full investigation. And then, the media picked up the story. A local news station did a follow-up. They interviewed former neighbors, HOA members, and even legal experts who had watched the case unfold. They painted Karen as the ultimate example of greed, entitlement, and karma coming full circle. One headline: HOA Karen tries to sue, ends up bankrupt and internet famous for all the wrong reasons. And Karen? She was losing her mind. She tried everything to get the posts taken down. She begged Reddit moderators to delete the original thread. She threatened legal action against YouTubers who covered her story. She even attempted to spin a sob story, claiming she was being harassed and cyberbullied by the internet. No one cared. People saw through it immediately. The same woman who had terrorized an entire neighborhood, who had abused her HOA power, who had tried to steal community money, was now playing the victim? Laughable. But then, the final blow. Someone tracked down her last remaining asset, a small vacation property she had in another state. It was the only thing she had left, but the court had placed a lien on it because of the money she owed. The HOA lawsuit had drained her, and now the bank was coming for the last piece of her empire. She went into hiding. Her LinkedIn? Deleted. Her Facebook? Gone. Her business website? Wiped. Karen disappeared from the internet, trying to escape the storm. But the thing about the internet? It never forgets. Even years later, people still share her story. The viral posts still get traction, and new people learn about her downfall every day. She will never escape what she did, and no matter where she goes, she will always be the Karen who lost everything. All because she couldn't stop herself from being the most entitled, power-hungry person alive. Karen was gone, but the chaos she left behind? That was a different story. Even with her reign of HOA terror officially over, there was one last mystery that had everyone talking. The internet had already served up the ultimate revenge, but something weird was still going on in the neighborhood. A final twist that had everyone looking over their shoulders. And it all started with the Wi-Fi. For weeks, people had been noticing strange things happening with their home networks. Random disconnections, slow speeds, and in some cases, complete blackouts. It didn't make sense. This was a well-developed, high-speed neighborhood. No one had ever complained about bad service before. But then someone put two and two together. The people who were affected the most? They were all the same people Karen had targeted when she was still in power. The families she had fined, the neighbors she had harassed, the ones who had voted against her in HOA meetings. Coincidence? No way. One of the neighbors, Dave, a tech-savvy guy who worked in cybersecurity, started digging. He ran network scans, checked his router logs, and cross-referenced them with a few other neighbors. The results? Someone had been remotely tampering with their networks. At first, it seemed like harmless interference, like someone was just messing with signal strength or bandwidth. But then, Dave found something way bigger. Someone had set up a rogue device within the community's shared network hub, the central system that connected all the homes to the internet. And when he traced the origin of the device, it led straight to Karen's old house. Except, Karen didn't live there anymore. The house had been foreclosed, put up for sale, and was now empty, or at least it was supposed to be. But something was still inside. Dave wasn't about to let this go. He called in a few neighbors, one of them being an off-duty cop, to check it out. When they got there, the house was dark. The front door was locked, the windows were shut, and from the outside, it looked completely abandoned. But the Wi-Fi signal? It was active. Using a signal scanner, Dave pinpointed the exact location of the rogue device. It was inside the garage. That's when they heard it. A faint beeping sound, like a router rebooting itself. Dave and the others exchanged glances. Someone had set this up on purpose, and not just any setup. This was a well-hidden surveillance tool. Someone had rigged Karen's old home with a system that could track and interfere with the entire neighborhood's Wi-Fi. But who? Karen was gone. She had disappeared into internet infamy exile. But had she really? Or had she left one last trap behind? Dave wasted no time. He disconnected the device, took it apart, and found something even worse. A list of connected devices. It showed which households had been targeted and even saved logs of people's online activity. This wasn't just interference. This was spying. The question now wasn't just who set it up, but why. Was Karen still lurking somewhere, watching from the shadows? Or was this someone else? Someone Karen had been working with? The police were called, and an official investigation was launched. The device was confiscated, and tech specialists were brought in to analyze everything. But the deeper they dug, the more disturbing it got. The logs showed months' worth of tracking, not just Wi-Fi disruptions, but actual data collection. Someone had been monitoring what people were searching for, what websites they visited, even which smart devices were connected in their homes. Why would Karen, or anyone, need this kind of information? The answer came a week later. An anonymous tip came in, revealing that Karen had one last lawsuit in motion. A desperate final attempt to regain control of the HOA, claiming she was wrongfully removed and that the entire community had conspired against her. She had no real evidence, so she had created her own by spying on the neighborhood. She had planned to use collected data to prove that the community was organized against her, framing them as cyberbullies who had engaged in a targeted harassment campaign. It was the most Karen move imaginable. The lawsuit? It didn't even make it to court. Once the police uncovered her illegal surveillance setup, they hit her with new charges, including invasion of privacy, cybercrime, and unauthorized access to private networks. The case was airtight. Karen, she was done. For good. She had gone from HOA tyrant to a viral laughingstock, and now, a convicted criminal. And the neighborhood? For the first time in years, people finally felt safe again. The HOA was restructured, new leadership took over, and every last trace of Karen's reign of terror was wiped away. The best part? A month later, Dave and a few neighbors threw a massive block party, celebrating the end of the Karen era. The entire community showed up, grilling, drinking, and laughing about everything they had been through. Someone even brought a cake, and on top of it, RIP Karen's Wi-Fi. And just like that, the neighborhood drama was finally over. And that, my friends, is how the worst HOA Karen in history met her final downfall. If you love stories where entitled people get exactly what they deserve, then you're in the right place. We bring you real, dramatic, and insanely satisfying tales of justice, revenge, and karma in action. So if you want to hear more crazy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.